It was the last day of sophomore year. A baseball game, nothing unusual, until a bat slipped out of a classmate's hands mid-swing and struck a teenage boy square between the eyes. In an instant, his face was crushed. Both eye sockets shattered. His brain slammed against the inside of his skull. He stopped breathing properly. He started seizing. He was airlifted to a trauma center, placed in a coma, hooked to a ventilator. When he woke up, his sense of smell was gone. When he blew his nose, air rushed into the broken sockets and pushed his eyeball halfway out of place. It took a year before his vision stopped doubling. It took months just to relearn how to walk in a straight line. That boy's name was James Clear, and the strange part of his story isn't the accident, it's what came after. He didn't claw his way back to greatness in one dramatic moment. There was no single turning point, no movie-style comeback scene. Instead, there was a bed made every morning, a slightly better night of sleep. A weight room he showed up to, one more time than the day before. Piece by piece, those unremarkable choices rebuilt him, until, years later, he stood among the best college athletes in the country. Not because of one big decision, because of thousands of small ones stacked on top of each other. That is the entire idea behind this book, distilled into one true story. Change doesn't arrive, it accumulates. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Almost everyone who sets a goal already believes in the same outcome as everyone else. Every competitor wants to win. Every dieter wants to be thin. Every writer wants to finish the book. Goals aren't the differentiator, because everyone shares them. What separates the people who actually get there isn't the destination they picture. It's the system. They build to walk toward it day after day, whether they feel like it or not, and systems run on something almost boring, consistency at a tiny scale. Picture a cycling team that hadn't won anything meaningful in over 100 years. A new coach comes in and refuses to chase one big fix. Instead, he hunts for 1% improvements everywhere. A slightly more ergonomic seat, alcohol rubbed on tires for better grip, heated shorts to keep muscles primed, even the color of the paint inside the team truck, chosen so dust would show up and engines could be kept spotless. No single change mattered, all of them. Together won that. Team 6 out of 10 cycling gold medals at the next Olympics. The math behind this is almost unsettling. Improve by 1% daily for a year, and you don't end up 365% better. You end up nearly 38 times better. Decline by 1% daily, and you don't just lose a little. You collapse toward almost nothing, but here's the part that trips people up. For a long time, none of it looks like it's working. Think of an airplane leaving Los Angeles. Shift its heading by just a few degrees, and at first the change is invisible, a few feet off course. But stretch that tiny deviation across a continent, and the plane doesn't land in New York anymore. It lands in Washington, D.C., or think of ice. Heat it from 25 degrees to 31 and nothing happens. It still looks like ice. Then, at 32, everything changes at once. This is why most people quit too early. They're doing the work, but they're standing in the boring middle, the phase where the results haven't broken the surface yet. A stonecutter can swing a hammer 100 times without a single crack appearing. It's not the 101st blow that splits the rock. It's every blow before it, finally cashing in. There's a subtle but powerful distinction between two people who are each offered a cigarette and say no. One says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The other says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." The first person is still fighting their old identity. The second person has already become someone new, and their behavior is just a reflection of that. This is the real engine behind lasting change. Every action you take is a small vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. Skip the gym once, and it's a data point. Skip it consistently, and you start collecting evidence for an identity you don't actually want. A man who bit his nails his entire life stopped almost overnight, not through willpower, but because a manicurist casually told him he had attractive hands. Suddenly, he had a new identity to protect. A friend who lost over 100 pounds didn't rely on discipline alone. Before every decision, she simply asked herself, what would a healthy person do? And then did that. Habits aren't just checkboxes. They're proof collected daily of who you're turning into. Every habit, good or bad, runs on the same ancient circuitry. First, a cue, something your brain notices. Your phone buzzes. Then a craving, the desire that cue creates. You want to know who messaged you. Then a response, the action you take. You unlock the phone. And finally, a reward, the payoff that teaches your brain this loop was worth repeating. This loop runs so smoothly, so invisibly, that most of it happens without conscious thought at all. A paramedic once looked at her father-in-law's face and somehow knew, before he felt a single symptom, that he was having a heart attack. Radar operators have picked out an enemy missile from a sky full of friendly aircraft on nothing more than a feeling. Their brains had simply run this pattern so many times that the recognition became instant, a kind of learned instinct, hiding in plain sight. Once you understand that every habit follows this same loop, you gain the ability to rewrite it. And that rewrite happens across 4 levers. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. Most bad habits don't survive scrutiny. They survive invisibility. Japanese train operators reduced accidents by a staggering margin using a technique called pointing and calling, physically pointing at each signal and speaking it aloud, forcing the brain into full awareness rather than letting it run on autopilot cut errors dramatically. You can do the same with your own life. Audit your daily actions and mark each one as helpful, harmful, or neutral. Suddenly, the invisible becomes visible. Then, get specific. A study on exercise found that people who simply wrote down, "I will work out at 7 a.m. in my living room," were more than twice as likely to follow through as people who just intended to work out more. Vague intentions rarely survive contact with a busy day. Specific plans do. You can also borrow momentum from habits you already have by chaining a new one onto an old one. After I do this, I will do that. And your environment matters more than your willpower ever will. Move water bottles to eye level in a cafeteria, and sales jump by a quarter. Move a bowl of fruit onto the counter, and people eat more of it, not because they decided to be healthier, but because the obvious choice became the easy choice. Your brain doesn't crave the reward itself nearly as much as it craves the anticipation of the reward. That anticipation, that dopamine spike, is what actually drives behavior. This is powerful enough to override instinct entirely. A mother goose will abandon her own egg to sit endlessly on an oversized volleyball because its exaggerated size outsignals the real thing. Human food engineers exploit the same. Wiring tuning salt, sugar, and fat into an almost irresistible bliss point. You can hijack this same mechanism for good. Pair something you need. To do with something you want to do, ride a stationary bike only. While watching your favorite show, for instance, and the craving for entertainment starts pulling you toward the workout. Community accelerates this even further. A father who wanted his daughters to master chess didn't force them. He simply built a home where chess was the normal, celebrated thing to do, and all 3 became world-class players. We are wired to imitate the people around us, especially the people we admire and the tribe we belong to. And when a habit feels like a burden, the fix is often just a reframe. Someone who believed smoking was a comfort had to see it instead as a trap. A man in a wheelchair chose to see it not as a limitation, but as the very thing that gave him freedom of movement. Change how you see. The habit and the craving itself starts to shift. Talking about change and taking action toward it are two very different things, and only one of them counts. In a photography class split into two groups, one graded purely on the quantity of photos submitted, the other purely on producing one single perfect image. The students obsessed with quantity ended up producing the best work. They were busy making mistakes, adjusting, learning by doing, while the perfectionists sat theorizing and never really began. The deeper principle here is that humans instinctively choose whatever requires the least effort. So the real strategy isn't more motivation, it's less friction. Set your environment up the night before. Lay out your clothes, prep your equipment, remove every tiny obstacle between you and the habit you want, and when a habit feels too big to start, shrink it ruthlessly down to 2 minutes. Not read for an hour, but read 1 page. Not run 3 miles, but put on your shoes. The goal in the beginning isn't performance. It's simply becoming the kind of person who shows up. Some of the most disciplined people you'll ever hear about didn't rely on discipline at all. They relied on removing their own choice. One writer famously locked his own clothes away with his servant, so leaving the house to socialize simply wasn't an option, and staying in to write became the default. Here is the rule your brain actually obeys. Whatever feels good right now gets repeated. Whatever feels good only in some distant future gets ignored, no matter how important it is. This is why habits with instant, tangible feedback stick so much better than ones that only pay off eventually. A public health effort in Karachi dramatically increased hand washing not through statistics about germs, but by switching to a soap that smelled wonderful and lathered luxuriously, making the habit itself, in the moment, satisfying. Visible progress works the same magic. A salesperson once moved a paper clip from one jar to another with every single sales call he made, turning invisible effort into something he could literally watch pile up. That simple act of tracking became its own reward, and accountability adds teeth to all of it. When the cost of failure becomes real and immediate, a public commitment, a financial penalty, a promise to someone who will actually check, follow through stops being optional. None of this works as a single trick. It works as a compounding system. One good habit won't transform your life. One coin won't make you rich. But a pile of habits, like a pile of coins, eventually does. And even genetics don't excuse the work. They simply point you toward which mountain is worth climbing. Two elite athletes with completely different body types can both dominate their sports, as long as each one is playing the game built for their strengths. The sweet spot for growth sits in a very narrow, very specific place, a challenge just slightly harder than what you can already do. Too easy and you get bored, too hard, and you get discouraged. Right in that thin margin between the two is where people describe losing themselves entirely in what they're doing. And even once a habit is built, the work isn't finished. Comfort is its own quiet danger. The moment something becomes routine, it's easy to stop paying attention to whether it's still serving you. The best performers in the world keep reviewing, keep adjusting, keep asking whether the habit still fits who they're becoming, because who they're becoming is never actually finished. Keep your identity loose enough to grow into. Not, I am the best at this one thing, but I am someone who keeps building. One version of you can break, the other version simply adapts. None of this happens in a single dramatic leap. It happens in the unglamorous middle, in the repetitions. Nobody's watching, in the version of you that shows. Up on the days, it would be easier not to. Small habits don't feel like they're leading anywhere, until one day you look back and realize they were the entire journey all along.